Welcome to the Marshall Pruett Podcast, presented by Cooper Tires. We are back with our friend Allan McNish, telling the tale of the 1998 24 Hours of Le Mans. 20 years ago, our wee friend took the first of his 3 Le Mans victories, this with the Porsche factory team, teammates Laurent Aiello from France, Stéphane Ortelli from Monaco, in the glorious, truly beautiful Porsche 911 GT1 98. Wonderful fight between the Porsche team. Nissan was there with a factory effort. You had Panos that was there. You had Toyota. There's a bunch of great manufacturers involved in this fight. So wanted to catch up with Allan, who did his usual job of spinning wonderful yarns about this 1998 event, how his Porsche arrangement came together, what the event itself was like. He has a phenomenal ability to recall the minutiae, the small details about what makes an event. 20 years ago, I watched it, and good lord, the things that he remembers, not being able to sit outside and watch it externally, but just from his vantage point, I can't imagine how he has retained all these things while lapping at crazy speeds and winning the race for Porsche. With all that said, there's also a great tale towards the end about early cellular telephones. So I hope you enjoyed that one as well. And as you probably hear, Allan and I have been good pals for a while, and it's always a blast when I can get him on the phone or sit down to talk about whatever, because he is one of the true gifts to this sport. So even in retirement, we're still finding a use for little Allan. As you know, you can get every episode of the Marshall Pruett Podcast on iTunes, also on Podbean, which is the host for our podcast. I do put everything up immediately on our Marshall Pruett Podcast Facebook page. And beyond that, I don't know, if you just type in Marshall Pruett Podcast on the interwebs, you should find lots of ways to either listen and hopefully subscribe as well. So with all that said, thanks again to our friends at Cooper Tires for making this possible. And thanks again to wee Al, who's getting ready to call the race as a commentator again to bring us back to Le Mans in his first ever victory some 20 years ago.
The year was 1998. A wee boy from Scotland. Allan...
my name's Allan. Hello there. Did you hear okay, or do you want me to go into the telephone?
Well, I know you're not a large man, but if you can get inside the telephone, that would be really impressive.
Am I fine? Okay.
Yeah, you're fine.
No stress.
So, First of all, let's reconcile the fact that your first win at Le Mans was 20 years ago. I look like I was rode hard and put away wet, so I definitely carry the years when you look at me. You, on the other hand, you bastard, still have the youthful appearance gene going on. Despite all that, does the 20-year anniversary strike you in any kind of way?
Apart from the fact that yesterday my daughter pointed out that I've got grey hairs starting at the side of my face, was probably one of the things. But it's quite funny, because I spoke to Stéphane Ortelli today. And, Steph was obviously my teammate in 98. And I look at him and I think, crikey, you haven't changed. He's done super well. He must be, using all the best creams in the world. And I'll sort of look at myself, and I still think it is 1998. Turn back time in that respect, but I don't know if quite the body's quite the same. Certainly the legs and the knee joints and everything else is starting to creak a little bit, but I suppose it was 20 years ago.
So I'm frequently reminded that we have many new fans to sports car racing, and while you and I and plenty of others recall the 98 race and celebrate it and such, there are folks who might be learning about it for the first time, or at least hearing the tale of how the race was won for the first time here. So for the sake of not having a super inside baseball conversation, how did the relationship with Porsche for this factory-supported factory Porsche 911 GT1 98 effort come together with you?
It goes back actually a year beforehand, in 97, and I'd been pursuing the single-seater route, Formula One or bust, and at that point it was bust. And I did a test with them. Actually, Alex Wurtz and I had the same test at Rickard in 97, the beginning, I think it was probably March or something like that. And it was a bit of a surprise because the car I thought was what, old racing drivers drove, and, it wasn't that quick or didn't really do very much. But in reality, it was a wee bit different to what I expected. And so I signed up with them to basically be like test and reserve driver in 97. And at the end of the year, Amferer, who was the boss of Porsche Motorsport, wanted to sort of rejig things a little bit because there was quite a bit of an increase in competition with Mercedes being there, Nissan being there, Toyota and the likes coming in. So it was going to be a bit of a fight, to say the least. But at the same time as well, they had got very, very close in 97 with the GT1, and Ralph Kelleners was leading at the time, coming up over Mulsanne, and I can't remember what it was now, 97, but anyway, I remember watching the TV and it caught fire, and that's not usually good. And
fire bad.
Yeah, fire was bad. And so 98 came around, and he asked if I would, to be honest, it was after Laguna in 97 where I was with Ralph, was thrown into the final FIA race, and it was the first time a Porsche had led, and we managed to finish third at the end. Probably should have won the race. We had a bit of a botch pit stop, but we were competitive, and I think that was enough to sort of give me the nod that maybe I was a guy that could pedal these things. And so 98 came around. But the thing about 98 was a wee bit different. It was because of 97, where they were getting a bit of a beating by BMW through the season, but also they had been close to winning Le Mans but didn't. There was a bit of pressure on for 98, so it was the first all fully carbon car that Porsche had ever built.
Wow.
And so Singer was obviously still masterminding the technical development of it.
Dear Norbert,
engine-wise, there was a push on the way that it was still a flat six, but the way the restrictors were positioned, because the Porsche felt that was something strangling them against the normally aspirated, because obviously the flat six turbo. And then the other thing was the push towards a non-H pattern synchromesh gearbox, which, if you think about it now, we're still at an H pattern gearbox. I think it was a 6-speed gearbox. It was just nuts, and you had to clutch and wait and change gear and everything else. It wasn't a racing gearbox as we know it. So there was quite a lot of shifts away from the historical Porsche way of doing things. But it was clear that it was still a robust car. We were quick. We didn't win Silverstone, which was the first FIA race. I was leading and we had a technical problem. That was the second race. The first race was Norchersleben, where our sister car was leading with Muller and Altzen. And I had my first of many rubs with Ricardo Zonta of Mercedes fame through the course of the year in the first one. So we got to Le Mans and we were quick, but we didn't win anything. We hadn't won anything, and we had shown the performance and everything else, but it wasn't there. And so Le Mans being the 50th anniversary of Porsche, basically to the day, and then the fact the board were fronting up and we were quickest on the test day, and that I think just added to the amplification of the focus that this could be the one, and the nerves and the jitters and everything else.
Sure.
But thankfully we pulled it off. Just one thing on the test day, because that obviously Sunday, I only remembered it on Sunday. I'd done because you were split into. It was actually a pre-test, if you remember. It wasn't the pre-test. It was pre-qualification.
Yeah.
So if you didn't get in a lap time, you could be out of the race before you even got to the race. You wouldn't even go to race week. And so it was quite key. And one of the Porsches, the privateer car, the Zach Speed, had a shunt or something in the morning and didn't make it. And so to come out quickest on the pre-test was pretty important then. But it was also critical to be quick, because you might not get the race otherwise. And so I'd done my laps, Steph had done his laps, and Laurent had done their laps. And no, Laurent wasn't there, it was only Steph and I. And we were basically done and dusted. I was changed. And we'd been, as first or second or third quickest pretty much all the time. And then Amferer came into the truck and asked me to get changed again to do one more run. And Brundle had gone quicker, and so had Bernd Schneider. And so I kind of got changed and I'm sauntering back out, not really knowing why I was being asked to do one more run, but sort of said, well, what do you want me to do? And he said, well, you're going for a quali run. I said, well, okay, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to push or what? And he said, well, I don't want you to drive around. It's basically get in there and get stuck in.
Yeah.
And it was probably, that quali lap in the pre-test was probably one of the best laps I've ever done around Le Mans.
Wow.
Now, you've got a quali tyre that only does about 80% of the lap before it goes off. So you've got to build it up very, very carefully. Like the out lap was walking speed. And then you've got to build up your temperatures of your brakes and also the front tyres, so they're breaking into Dunlop down into the S's, that you've got the right temperature and balance. So you're not sort of too cold there, but right at the end of the lap and vice versa. But it was an absolutely superb lap, and it beats Martin's time by, I think, about 5 thousandths, and Bernd's time by about a few tenths. And that was it. Drove back to Paris that night, blew up my road car by thinking I was still on the Mulsanne straight, and there was no corners. Seriously, blew the shit out of the engine. Yeah.
What was it?
That was maybe not. I was maybe best not to put this way, but that was the 911. You remember when they changed over to the water cooled?
Yeah.
And had some problems at the beginning. Well, we got to this triage and there's this steam coming out the back of the exhausts, and I thought, oh dear, and that was it. Yeah, engine was gone.
So what was it about?
It's maybe one of the engines.
What was it about that lap, Alan? I mean, was it obviously a maximum attack type lap, but was it the just the flow of it or the mindset? I mean, what is it you think looking back?
I think the car, in comparison to cars that I drove later on, it was more forgiving, no question. So you could throw it into corners and get away with a little bit more. But the other thing is you had a quali tyre that was like 5-6 seconds a lap faster than a race tyre.
Jeez.
So you were venturing into the unknown. It wasn't a case of you're building up to it. You were just venturing into the unknown. How much grip have you got? I don't know. I'll throw the car in and I'll find out. And you rocketed through the corner. And so the feedback of the tyre was very, very important to give you the understanding when you got to Dunlop what you actually had, when you got to the S's, what you had, Tetra Rouge, the chicanes, everywhere else, just what you had underneath you and when it was going away. And when it went away, it just disappeared. It wasn't like you just dropped a little bit of lateral grip or longitudinal, you just lost a lot and you'd slide around. And I think I just hit it spot on in everything. I remember there was one bit of traffic I caught coming into Mulsanne, and I just caught it at the apex and coming out, and I would say that was probably 0.5 of a loss, and that was all I think I would ever have gained more if it had been the perfect of perfect laps.
Wow.
And so it's just one that sits in my mind as an absolute beauty. And I've had some good laps around Le Mans, but that one was probably my first one, but it was also, I think as well, it was a bit of a marker. And I loved the car. It was one where the driver and the car are just fully at one, the tyre, everything is just working and it feels fluid. You're not pushing it, it's just flowing with you. And you need that at Le Mans because it's so bloody quick.
Before we get into the race weekend, can we just pause quickly to speak about or have you share some of your appreciation for the beauty of the GT198, not only the physical design, the lines of the car, but with the complementary livery as well. I mean, that's just one of those vehicles that I think we're going to look back at in perpetuity and say, darn near perfection.
Yeah, it was probably one of the last vehicles that was designed without the angular edges in mind,
yep.
Which was very much the case with the competition. When you went to the Toyota we were for the following year, it was very much angular edges, Audi angular edges, aerodynamics, wind tunnels, simulations, everything else. Whereas this still had a little bit of the look of a Porsche. You could tell with the headlights it was from a Porsche, and there was that real characteristic sort of flow through it. That it had 911. It was called the 911 GT1. It had a road car that was what it was born out of, and or in that particular one, it was more the race car was what the road car was born out of. But you know the principle of what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
And therefore, I think it had very well. I know for a fact because I know the guy that did the styling cues for it. It was he came from the road car side of things. So you know the road car side had very strong styling cues, and I don't think any car at Le Mans has had that since. Not to the same extent. The other thing, when you talked about the colour, if you take the Mobil 1, who was the main sponsor of the car, and Herbert Meyer was a guy from Mobil, if I remember correctly, and Mobil 1, the colours of the blues and the reds and the black and everything else is the exact proportion of that Mobil 1 block that was on the nose of the car. So the colours were as if the Mobil 1 had then bled all over the rest of the car, and that's how it came up. But I think it's stunning. I look at it and I just think I've got a relationship with the car, so there was an element of love from that point of view. But at the same time as well, it just has got some curves around about it that to me were quite beautiful. And I'm not a romantic person, as you know, but you know, with that, there was a bit of bromance going on.
Get a glass of wine or two in you, and that story changes. But that's a different podcast entirely. But no, I mean, I know what you mean, though. It does have it. There's just something about it, and I think the romance is, you know, it does maintain that visual identity of when these crazy hyper versions of high performance street cars were transformed into prototypes instead of something truly bespoke visually that has no connection to the road. So, and that might even be where we're headed here in the future too. Back to.
Harry sent me a note today asking, "Is this a good thing?" And I sent him one back saying, "Hell yes, this is a good thing. This is what's happening. I mean, with the regulations for Le Mans, I think that's a really, really good thing." And I spoke to Pierre and Gerard in China just after Audi pulled out and said, "Look, you've got to, in my opinion, look back 20 years. Look back and look at this era of what we had and what, you know, the manufacturers that are involved in GTE, look at the manufacturers that are round and about, look at the fact that not everybody's got huge budgets any longer, and look at that as a concept, because I think that's the right concept." It was right back then. Look at the numbers that were involved as well at Le Mans that year. There were so many big names as manufacturers that were involved because they could afford to be. And, it was something that you aspired to have in your wall if you were a kid, was a picture of one of these cars.
Absolutely. The other thing, too, which, with not trying to denigrate anything today, but if you look at, if we return to the 98 race, you've already mentioned the manufacturers. It's Mercedes versus BMW versus Porsche versus Nissan versus Toyota. We've got 2 major Japanese manufacturers. We've got 3 major German manufacturers, just in the GT1 prototype category alone, with multiple entries each. This is a place where, as you're getting ready to compete here with your teammates, it's not as if you've got 1 or 2 other cars to be concerned about. I mean, you've got your teammates, you've got a lot of cars that are high quality and determined to stop you. I have to believe that was also part of the, fun of the challenge, but at least knowing that whatever we get by the end of this race, it's going to be the byproduct of a fight, not just necessarily a gift.
Well, it's definitely not a gift. We knew that. We already knew the fight, or I knew the fight from the FIA Championship with Mercedes and BMW. But then you added in everybody else, and that was the era of Walkinshaw as well, and he was running the Nissan program. And Toyota TMG had came out with a rally mentality into, but with Andre de Cortons of the Peugeot fame running their program. So, there was a whole load of different people in there. The one thing that I did feel, though, and I was a little kid, so was Laurent, Steph. We were just puppets, really, for Singer and Ampferer. But the one thing I did feel was when Porsche went into the garage, and it was the first garages you come in, it was their home. You know, all the engineers knew where to go. They knew what to do. They sat down at the same place. They'd probably sat for the last 15 years. And, you know, everything they were totally aware of. And I think that definitely helped us because we were just kids and just happened to be driving for them. But I think in that respect, it was a case of we were guided through the experience by definitely the masters of that era. No question about it. And in the other garage, you've got to remember, just next door garage as well, was Yost, who was running the open-top cars as well.
Jeez.
So we had Jutner and we had Yost on the other side. So, you know, I think, the victories, the Le Mans victories that were in that double garage between Yost and Porsche, Singer and Co. is pretty spectacular.
So let's talk about the race itself, Alan. I mean, the pace in competition seemed to be one where, you know, I don't know if you would say that there was a pre-race favorite so much. I think that there were a couple of cars that intrigued folks as to whether they might, you know, run off or what they might be able to do. What do you remember from, I guess, the opening hours of the race and the level of competition that was being presented?
Well, the first thing was, you know, I said about the pre-test and being quickest. When it came to the race, and the pre-test was, I think it was 6 weeks before. It wasn't 2 weeks before as it is now. It was a long time before. But anyway, we came back and everybody seemed to turn it up to 11, and we were already on 10. And so, you know, we didn't really have much else left. And so it came to qualifying, and Mercedes and Toyota were definitely quicker than us. And I told you I had a really good lap in qualifying in the pre-test. Well, I didn't have a good one in the actual qualifying itself. I screwed up my outlap and then didn't get the best out of the tyre. And so by the time we got into the race, it was a case of, well, we just drive this thing as fast as we can. And in all honesty, that was the only way I knew. And so for us, in our car, we just tried to get a good balance on it in the qualifying through the night and everything else. And then after that, it was a case of, by the way, that was at the time when you changed engines, and on the Friday, you went to the aerodrome and did a shakedown. Huh. You remember those days?
That's right. Yeah, a wee bit different. Yeah, I mean, someone would be either jailed or shot if they tried to do such a thing these days.
Yeah,
wow.
I know that would be you. You'd never be allowed to breathe again in a paddock. But yeah, we did all of that. So anyway, the start, I took the start, and we were not quick enough, but we weren't out of the question. But I remember coming past, and Schneider was parked at the side of the road, just at the end of the pit lane. I had a bit of a scrap with Gunnar on the first couple of laps, and he was, I thought, a bit mental. He went round the outside of me in Indianapolis into the left hand. So outside of me in the right hander into the left. And at which point there I thought, right, okay, you clearly want this corner on, you know, lap 3 of a 300 and something at lap race, more than I do. But, you know, they were clearly going for it. And but anyway, Schneider stopped, and then the other car stopped, and then the Toyota Brundle had a problem, and by 9 o'clock at night we were leading. And I'm thinking, crikey me, we're leading. And then it all settled down. It drizzled through the night. I got woken up. You remember Kay Wilson?
One of the dearest people in the world.
Well, I got woken up because we didn't have all the big hospitality and stuff like that we have now. We had a caravan, and the caravan wasn't the best caravan in the world. It's not your American caravans, to say the least. It was a wee bit more, you know, your Scottish caravan, and so I got woken up and said I was back in the car, and the first thing was, where are we? We're leading, right? Okay, we're still in the game. And when it drizzled and when it was wet, and it wasn't wet the full way around the circuit, then that's where we were very, very good. I have to say, that's where we pulled a lot of our gap, because we were I drove when it was drizzly, and I was able to get sort of 3-4 seconds a lap on everybody. We had ABS on the car and no traction control. Toyota couldn't make their ABS system work, but they had traction control. So we had differences in terms of where we had our gains and losses and things, but I was able to gain a hell of a lot in those damp conditions. Steph and Laurent, when it rained a wee bit heavier in the early parts of the morning. And it got to about, I think it was about 5 o'clock in the morning or something like that, 5, 6 in the morning, and I got back in. That's where I was told we were still leading. And, you know, your happy hour that, I suppose, I remember H was the one that really, I think, coined the happy hour thing. But that wasn't necessarily the big difference as it was then, because the tyres were very greasy in comparison. You didn't multi-stint them like you did then, and the stint was about an hour anyway because of the fuel. We had 120 litres, if I remember, in fuel.
Yikes.
But anyway, coming back, I'm sort of diversifying it a wee bit. Coming back, it was Jörg Muller was in the sister car, and the Toyota had a problem, so it was basically between Jörg and us. And I came out of the first chicane, and Jörg was just driving quite slowly out of the first chicane, and there was gravel and crap coming out the back of the car because he had skipped over the gravel trap and damaged the floor. And so I thought, right, now we've got a lap lead. Now we've got you by the balls. And, you know, we were, the race finished at 2, if I remember correctly. So we were 8 hours or 7 hours or something from the end of the race. And we had a lap lead. And we'd never had anything like that up until this point. And about 30 seconds later, the water temperature started rising. So we had a dash on there, and it showed you it was old-fashioned, as in water temperature going up and alarm. So clearly, me being an engineer, I radioed this in, water temperature alarm. I think it's only a sensor. They've got a bit of a different opinion than me, because I'm just resetting this thing, convincing myself it's only a sensor and I don't actually have a water temperature problem.
Wow. And
I'm just going to continue because we're leading Le Mans. And, I don't want to come into the pits, because if I come into the pits, we could be out of the race, and we're leading Le Mans by a lap. And so all of this is going through my head, and I get the radio call saying, box, box, box. It was Roland Kusmal was our engineer for that race. And box, 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 into the pits. And we're up on jacks. And in the other side of the garage is the other car up on jacks, which is replacing the floor on Jörg's car. And so I promise you, at that moment in time, you can just see the whole race going away. And I just wanted to cry.
Yeah.
Because I could see Le Mans just disappearing through my fingers. From the glow, thinking, Christ, we've got this in our hands. And this is how naive I was. We've got this in our hands with 7 hours to go. It's in our fucking hands. And then suddenly, 30 seconds later, it starts to disappear, and it's like sand going through your hands, and you can't stop it. And then we're in the garage. So from a dominant 1-2 from Porsche's point of view, on the 50th anniversary, we're both in the garage up on stands. And then after that, it was a water pipe that split. So we got back out. We lost like 30 minutes or something nuts. And we got back out, and it was a chase between us and the Toyota of Thierry Boutsen. And it was just back and forward, back and forward. We weren't as quick. They were coming back from gearbox problems. We weren't as quick, but we were much more consistent. They lost time in the pits. They weren't very good on outlaps. We were really good on outlaps. We were good in the pits. We were just consistent. I would say we were Porsche in that respect, strong and consistent. And it came to the point where I was in the car for the end, and we were first and second all the way through to, when I say first and second, we were either first and then the pit stop at swing to second, first swing to second.
Yeah.
And you just was the way it was going. And then and it was just before my final stop, coming into Porsche corners on the left-hand side, I saw the Toyota 27, and I radioed saying Toyota 27 at the side of the road. Porsche, am I leading? Through the Porsche curves, past the start-finish line, up into Dunlop, silence. And then down into the S's, I got the message, yes, we're leading. And at that moment, it was like, Christ, this is the second, you've been given something back again. And it was a case of just taking it to the end. And it was the era where, you would do photo finishes, you'd slow down in the last lap. It was when it crossed at 3 o'clock, and I do remember this. I remember looking at the clock coming across the start-finish line and working out that actually at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock, the 24-hour end, was when I was at Mulsanne. So I knew when we got to Mulsanne, we'd won the race. And in that side of things, it was not that you had to cross the checker and do all the things that you have to in the real world or now. And the marshals were out on the circuit and everything else. It was just a complete and utter disbelief.
Wow.
And coming and, just seeing Laurent Steph. And that's the first time, where I realised as well what you've gone through, because you haven't seen these guys for 24 hours together. And then you get up onto the podium and you're dancing around like three kids, which we were. And we had never seen each other for 24 hours, but we've done all of this sort of work in between times. We had a little Kodak, these Instamatic cameras that you used to get?
Absolutely.
We had some of those that you sent off to the local pharmacy, and you got the photos back about 6 months later. Well, we had some of those, and we took some pictures of that, little selfies and bits and pieces on the podium. And those are some of my most cherished memories.
And what is that like, Alan? Because, by this point, in your career leading up to Le Mans 98, obviously you had a lot of success in junior open wheel. You'd been, Formula One test driver. You'd done a lot of things, but I don't know if you've ever stood atop a podium with that mass of humanity in front of you like that. What was it like?
Well, I suppose it's like being a rock star, but if you've heard me sing, I'm not. It was just amazing. It was overwhelming, actually, because you stand up there and you see everybody flooding onto the start-finish line. You see the whole pit lane just suddenly is a mass of people all the way up, but you can spot different people. And you look down and you actually spot faces in there that are maybe, 90, 100 deep. I could see my dad, for example, and just different other people around and about that were there. Clearly, you look out for them. There was the odd Scottish flag as well, which was quite nice.
Wow! And
in that was quite an emotional moment on the podium, as I said. It was definitely a very different moment when you got downstairs to your team, because that again. They were all there all the way through it. And as I said, the board members fronted up at Le Mans that year on the private jet of Porsche for nothing other than a first. Nothing else was acceptable. Zero. And they got a first and second. So in terms of Porsche's point of view, they pulled the rabbit out of as in Porsche Motorsport, they pulled the rabbit out of the hat, because they not only got first, but they got first and second on the 50th anniversary. After having a bit of a kicking, to be honest with you, since the previous Le Mans in different other things. And at the end of the year, that was the race we won, but it was the race that everybody cared about that one. Nobody cared about the other ones. And I think that was something that was lost on me. I didn't get it, but I don't think it was lost on Amfer or Singer at the end of the day, what they were able to achieve that day. Having seen it more since, I understand it.
Is also Porsche's final visit to Le Mans until their return in the prototype ranks in 2014. So it was another not only celebration of the 50th and whatnot, but it was also ended up being the perfect punctuation for the mark.
It wasn't meant to be, though.
Well,
it wasn't meant to be.
No, fair point.
They pulled the plug at the end of the year at the Christmas party, and then we did the development of the LMP 900, and then they pulled the plug again. So I think it was, certainly from a motorsport perspective, it wasn't the intention to go out that way for it to be that way, but it's what it was. And, in a way, that gave me the other careers that I've had as well. But, you come back to that point, I think that's a very, very important thing. you don't realise what Le Mans is as a driver. You turn up and you think, nice, this circuit's big, this is fast, this is everything else. And you drive it for the first time and it blows your mind, no question, it just blows your mind. It was the speed going into the first chicane, I remember, it just felt like I was factor 3. I was doing like 700 miles an hour or something. And then you get used to it, and then you do the race, and the race is all sort of dust and dirt and a bit of blood and everything else all the way through it. People in good positions having problems, crashes, storylines all the way through it. But as a driver, as you said, I'd done a few things before, and I'd got a pretty reasonable record. But I did not appreciate what Le Mans would do for my career, without a question. No way did I think that it would be the thing that would sort of basically put me back on the map. It opened up doors in Formula One that year, end of '98. It opened up the doors to Toyota going to Formula One. It put me on the map with pretty much every manufacturer that was considering looking at sports car racing. And that was something that was a bit of a surprise to me. And I think it did the same for Laurent, it did it for Steph as well. Laurent was in a slightly different situation because he was only coming in for, those races, and he was very established in touring car.
Yep.
But for Steph and I think it was a slightly different thing.
I mean, I was watching Blancpain race last night with Stefan in it. I mean, that's as we opened with an ageless wonder. Well, let's close on that, Allan. Knowing all that you've achieved, the additional victories at Le Mans, World Championships, and whatnot, tell me about the enduring bond between yourself, Stefan Ortelli, and Laurent Aiello. I have to imagine, as this trio. It also being your first win at Le Mans all these years later, I'm sure there's still a very special bond between the three of you.
No, there are, but for different reasons as well. Some more than you know. Laurent was my teammate in Dams in 1991 in Formula 3000. So I actually raced Le Mans against Laurent in 1984 in the karting World Championships. 85, sorry. In the karting World Championships. And he finished fourth and I finished third. So, in that, Laurent and I went back a long, long time in different ways. And when Amferer said to me that he was an option, I said, Christ, get him in the car. Because A, I knew him, B, he was of average height, and C, I knew that he was very adaptable. He's probably, him and Tom are probably two of the most adaptable drivers I have ever came across in my life.
Hand them anything, they'll make it work.
Yeah, and it came to Steph and I didn't really know him from that era, to be honest with you, not like Laurent, but Laurent did. But Steph in 97, I got to know him reasonably well. And, you can't help but like him. He's too nice a person. And he just opened, the thing about Stefan was he just opened his heart to you. And he opened his book, his data book of Le Mans, how to drive it, what to do, this, that, the next thing, things to be careful of. He was an open book, too much of an open book probably in the political world of today, but he was superb. So I think we all had a real understanding, and we were all similar age. Within a year or two, we were all similar type of people as well, and in that it definitely was a bond. And we'll see each other in a couple of weeks. First time I'll have seen Laurent probably in about 4 to 5 years. Steph I see a wee bit more often because he lives in Monaco, and I see him, I speak to him quite often, but first time I've seen Laurent for a wee while. But we'll see each other in a couple of weeks for a wee reunion.
I love it. Well, thank you as always, mate. It's just
we might even drive the car again.
What? I want to see all three of you fit in it. First of all,
well, last week I was in Scotland and I found my overalls from 1998. Yes. I'm frightened to try them on though, just in case.
Maybe there's a local tailor that can add a little bit of stretchy material in certain places. I know all about stretchy material, so I'm just passing on advice here.
Easy.
sorry.
I was thinking more about taking them in.
No, listen to you. Well.
One other little thing for you. It was at the time when mobile phones were coming in. And this was it. I had to drive on the Monday to, we were testing at Hockenheim about 2 or 3 days later, which was the first race. Hockenheim was the first race, the next one, and that next test was the first time Ralph Hüttner was my race engineer.
Oh, wow.
As well. And so driving to Hockenheim from Le Mans, and my phone didn't stop. It was a phone that was in the car, so you took the SIM card out and you stuck it into the car, and then you had this handheld thing. And I promise you, I was on the phone from leaving Le Mans until getting to there, with people just phoning up, congratulations, well done, everything else. It was absolutely stunning. And when I got home, I had an old answering machine message, and a friend of mine, there's a radio station called Radio 5 Live, BBC Radio 5 Live in the UK, which is a sports network, and she had recorded them playing Le Mans, doing Le Mans live in the last hour. She had recorded that, and McNish crosses the line to win Le Mans. And that was the first one. The second thing that came into it was the next message was Jackie Stewart saying congratulations, stunning result, and then it just went on from there. And those are memories that I've still got as well of, what Le Mans actually means to you. The only thing that was negative about it is my bill for the telephone.
I was going to say
£450 for the month.
£450.
£450, which is the equivalent of about $3,000 now, or $4,000 or something.
Well, knowing how just free and open you are with your wallet, and I'm sure no complaints at all about paying that bill.
No, it was good. I had the prize money to pay for it. The prize money bought my first, I bought not my first motorbike, I bought a motorbike with it. And it's 20 years old now, and I've still got it. I had it refurbed last year. And it's quite funny because I saw that as well last week for the first time in probably about 3 or 4 years, because it sits in Scotland. And I won't sell the bike, it's worth nothing now. But it's just the principle of what we went through to get that bike.
And that was our boy McNish. I love the guy. Look forward to seeing him. Actually, I don't know when. Hopefully sometime soon. He's got a busy life. But yeah, hopefully we'll get him stateside. And we'll come up with more fun stuff to talk about. Again, you can get everything that we do happen to be putting up. Lots of Le Mans content this week. I think I have 1 or 2 more items to post to look back at the 1988 Le Mans race with Andy Wallace, who won for Jaguar with Jan Lammers and Johnny Dumfries. And again, maybe 1 or 2 other bits, but it's been a busy week of podcasting, and thank you all for listening and supporting. All right, I'm Marshall Pruett. This is Marshall Pruett Podcast presented by Cooper Tires. Thank you for listening.